And we welcome you to this special edition of In the Circle. Here, the rumor is, Victor, it's July.
It is, yes,
It is.
and and a lot of people are moving because of it.
Julying. Get it? Julying.
I,
Courtesy
leave
of
the comedy,
Kofi
leave the comedy to me, please. Okay.
Actually, I stole that from Kofi Kingston. That was his joke on SmackDown tonight.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be like the Viking Raiders and smash you after that bad joke.
All right, coming up on this show, as Victor mentioned, a lot on the show. We thought we were going to talk a lot about the transfer portal, and we will, comings and goings there. Coaching news, and I broke a news in the morning, so I've not slept much. We'll get into all of that moves as well coming up on the show. But we're going to open with maybe the biggest story in college athletics going on momentarily, and that's, of course, the Big Ten adding UCLA and USC for the year 2024. That's all coming up here on this live edition of In the Circle. Make sure you like us, subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can watch our Nicole Dixon interview from this week's podcast on Thursday, the new head coach at New Mexico, Justin McLeod. We're hoping will join us at the 9:30-ish. He's out in Colorado, where everybody in softball is.
Except us.
And lots of late-breaking news on the transfer portal, including some big names here coming over the last hour into the portal. That is all coming up on this show. And, of course, Victor, they can subscribe to our podcast. How?
Subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Rate and review us 5 stars. If you rate us 4 stars, you tend to believe that this episode of SmackDown will be more interesting than anything that we're going to be talking about tonight, which we all know that's going to be a lie. And, by the way, go to our YouTube channel, because subscribing to our YouTube channel gives you early access to our interviews coming up for next week. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, you might as well click that subscribe button right now and get access to it.
That's correct. All right, let's get into the big news in college athletics. It broke on Thursday. UCLA and USC go into the Big Ten effective July 1st, 2024. Still
2 years from now, they will be in the Big Ten.
So we're going to, for this show, we're going to just focus on the softball end. There's plenty of content out there from a college athletics slant standpoint.
Yes.
That's been speculating and breaking all this down. And for this podcast, we're going to ignore USC because they're irrelevant because they don't
play softball.
Yeah, so screw them. But this is significant softball news here because there's ramifications here, Victor. One of the Mount Rushmores of college softball, the UCLA Bruins, will be in the Big Ten July 1st, 2024. And here's my reaction. All of you Pac-12 people, pay attention real closely here. Victor, what have I been saying to them the last couple of years?
Essentially, if you don't adapt, the sport and college athletics will pass you by. And you got a big fat splash of cold water to your collective face when the Bruins and the Trojans said deuces and are going to the Big Ten. And here's the allow me to kind of start things off. The Pac-12, its fan base, its administration, and people in the media have been so stagnant in terms of saying we're the conference of champions. We rely on tradition. We rely on brand names. We don't need to adapt with the times. We have to play the Rose Bowl at 5 p.m. on New Year's Day so the sunrise can be over the sand and glaciers mountains. Well, guess what? You are officially on the endangered list because the 2 schools that have been the pillars of your league are gone in 2 years. And you're saying that you're blindsided by it? Okay, Eric, let's play connect the dots. What network currently has the rights to the Big Ten?
Well, that's to be determined because they're about to reach a new.
But currently speaking,
Fox and Big Ten Network, ESPN has a piece, but really it's Fox and Big Ten Network.
Okay, Where does Fox usually do their big news Saturday kickoff and their studio shows for college football?
Big Ten.
No, what city?
Oh, Los Angeles. The studio show. Studio
Come
show.
on now. Exactly. So the Big Ten.
Well, but yeah, this is. I mean, that's all about the college athletic side.
Yeah, but okay, but talk. Okay, let's get back to college softball. I kind of put a feeler tweet out there in our Twitter account at the Circle SB earlier today, saying you're excited about Michigan taking on UCLA, Minnesota taking on UCLA in a Big Ten game, and some of the people saying no. And one of the answers, typical Pac-12 answer, you lose one of the greatest rivalries in UCLA and Arizona. If you haven't seen the landscape, ladies and gentlemen.
No, look, I'm not thrilled. I don't think this is great for college athletics. I don't think it's great for college softball necessarily. However, I warned everybody. The Pac-12 had issues. And I kept saying that. And the response I got, feedback was like, we're fine. This is propaganda. It's SEC bias. Look at what we did. We got 3 teams in the field. Yep. Guess what? You just lost your franchise program. You just lost UCLA like that. And you're probably going to lose more. This is not far from over. I mean, you're in the Pac-12 now, which blows me away. I mean, this is a significant story to me because the Pac-12 was softball forever.
Yes.
This was the sport.
They were the standard of softball.
And now you just lost the program. UCLA is going to the Big Ten. You might lose more. I think, to think that, college athletics is headed for super conferences, and I don't want to get into all that, but this is a dark day for the Pac-12 and softball fans. It is. Done. Could you still be a good conference? We'll get into that as possibilities of what could happen next from a softball standpoint.
Yes.
But, they got a couple years. But, yeah, this is bad. I mean, the greatest rivalry in the sport, arguably, historically, UCLA and Arizona, might be over in 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
Might be over. Could be done.
Yeah.
That is surreal. And I'm not sure. Look, from a financial standpoint, it's a good move for UCLA because they're going to make probably triple to quadruple the money as a university, as an athletic department, than they would in the Pac-12. I'm not sure if this will benefit the softball landscape. Maybe it will. Maybe they'll spend some of that money to renovations. Maybe they'll
long overdue renovations. We hope.
I'm curious how everybody's curious how the traveling is going to work. Are they going to charter the flights for softball? There's a lot of I don't know. Can you get winter clothes in Los Angeles? What's it going to be like when they're playing in Madison, Wisconsin? And it's just so crazy.
Bloomington, Indiana, West Lafayette, Lincoln, Nebraska.
Yeah, to me, the Pac-12 softball is hanging by a thread. And, the big question is what's going to happen next. There's a lot of reports that Notre Dame is the next target for the Big Ten, which means they could leave the ACC in softball. And again, I'm just going to focus on softball because
we're keeping it. We're trying to keep it. Look, it's too wild of a story, so we're going to narrow it to our sweet spot in softball.
Right.
But
imagine if Notre Dame leaves the ACC and goes to the Big Ten. All right, now all of a sudden you got Notre Dame, UCLA, the Big Ten now kind of profile in softball.
That really boosts us up in profile. Absolutely.
Very up. And then who else do they add in these super conferences? What happens to the rest of the Pac-12? Do they stay intact? Do they get poached? Is Oregon and Washington on the Big Ten list here in the next year or two? Does the Big 12 be aggressive here, Victor, and add teams like the Arizona schools, for example, to be proactive before the Pac-12 may try to steal teams from the Big 12? Do we see a merger between the Big 12 and the Pac-12, which I think would make it an incredible softball league?
Oh, my goodness, yes.
The other aspect is the Pac-12 could also add Mountain West schools.
Boise State, San Diego State, yeah.
Right, UNLV could be in the mix. So that's what's at right now on the table over there from that standpoint. So that's what that's where we're at right now with the whole industry here. From it's wild, and again, I'm not sure this is great for college athletics long term, but it is what it is. It ain't nobody's stopping it. Television is running a lot of this. I do wonder, and this is something I am been waiting for. when this new Big Ten deal breaks through. It was supposed to be in May, by the way. Now we know why we haven't heard anything on the Big Ten, because they've been adding UCLA, USC. They're going to add a ton of money. I'll be curious to see, obviously, where does the Big Ten, who are the partners for the Big Ten as far as the TV partners in this new deal, and how they will cover softball. Will it just be mainly on the Big Ten network like it has been? Does Fox decide to become a player and carry Big Ten softball? Oh, God forbid they do that. We got to carry garbage USFL football nonsense in front of 5 people in a building like Birmingham in that dump.
At Ergo Pesilo, ladies and gentlemen.
Seriously. Why would you carry that? People wonder why this is going on. It's because people give too much control to football. They just bend down and bend over for football when nobody gives a bleep about USFL football. Nobody. Unless Victor's actually on the field playing, I ain't watching. I'd rather watch softball on Fox than watch freaking minor league garbage football. Give me a break. It's a joke. And that's so... But we'll see if that happens. Probably not. That would make too much sense. But anyway, Vic, that's where we're at right now. You all right?
No, are you all right?
I'm just,
dude, we're 11 minutes in. You already throwing a 3-alarm fire over there, brother.
It pisses me off, okay? Because you've known me long enough, and we've done the show long enough. I don't treat the women's sports and men's sports separately. I treat them all the same, right? I'm critical. I break down the TV numbers. I will tell you what's a good product, what's a bad product. Where women's sports gets screwed here. It just gets screwed over here when networks decide to put garbage like the USFL on instead of women's sports. Mm-hmm. That's a joke. It's a joke. I won't even mention other products, sporting things they create. The big 3. Let's go see a bunch of fat, out of shape, over the hill former basketball players playing basketball. Yeah, I'd rather see that than women's softball players play. Give me a break.
Oh,
it's gonna be that type of show.
Oh my!
Yeah, go ahead and at me. I dare anybody. Anyway, but because, and the reason I bring all this up, it's crap like this, and we got to put football on. We got to put Wisconsin, Illinois on TV football-wise, because no. It's why these moves happen. Like, it's just, I hate it. I love UCLA to not see UCLA in the Pac-12, that is going to be weird, but it's happening. And I think it's going to be interesting what the next moves are. So let's kind of, Victor, what do you think will be the next move? Let me just ask you that. What do you think will be the next moves, the next domino to fall? That's another cliche. It's been used a lot. Another chip, if you will. I gave you some of the options that could be in play.
Well, the big thing right now is, what do the remaining members of the Pac-12 do? Yes, Kristen, Eric is certainly bringing the heat this evening. I wasn't expecting that. It's all a matter of, do they go with their state, right? Do they go with their state partners? Because I'm hearing Oregon and Washington could link up to make a move.
Listen, the last thing I want to hear is a politician trying to get involved in this. Okay, let's not even go there. These clowns. Speaking of clowns,
yep. We all know what's been going on with the news, but yes, if I had a red nose, I would put one on right now to talk about them.
By the way, I hope everybody realizes there's a good chance this will affect the Women's College World Series as we.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
I think. Let me just say, and then we'll kind of go into our speculative. If you think these championships are going to stay the way they are, it ain't.
No.
Just like I think you're going to see the SEC and the Big Ten probably do their own postseason in football, I think the NCAA tournament in basketball and all those sports are going to change drastically.
Mm-hmm.
Drastically.
And you're not going to like it.
Probably not, especially if you're a mid-major small school. You're probably going to be kicked out to the curve.
Yeah.
Go ahead. But that's, this is just going to be bad. It's going to be good, not great. So we'll see. We will see. what happens there. But what do you think will happen? Do you want Notre Dame in the Big Ten? Do you want, because remember, now they would join for football, but they would have to pay about $100 million to get out of the ACC and the other sports combined. Do you want to see a Big 12 Pac-12 merge? What do you want to see happen?
Well, look, it's going to be absolute chaos.
Yep.
And the biggest thing, Eric, in anything, follow the money.
Yeah,
it's all about
that's what everybody doing.
It's all about brands and television markets. So the next biggest television market that's available within the Pac-12 is the Pacific Northwest, Seattle.
Yeah. Yep. Oregon. I think Washington, you're right, and Oregon too.
Phil Knight,
he's still pretty influential over there.
Phil Knight, exactly. So if the Big 12 somehow gets Oregon and Washington to join them with UCF, Houston, and BYU, they're going to be joining the league a year from now. All of a sudden, the Big 12 with Washington, Oregon, UCF coming off a super regional, Oklahoma State coming off their 3 straight trips to Oklahoma City. The Big 12 can make a legitimate argument. There's a shameless plug.
There's a shameless plug. It could look like that.
Exactly.
How would you want to do it though? Wait, because do you think the Big 12 and the Pac-12 should merge? In other words, the two conferences with the current members just merge and form I think it would be 20, if my math's correct. What would that be in softball? 16, 8?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11.
I know it'd be like 20, 22 schools in total, but I'm just talking softball.
It'd be 16 in softball because you're including.
Yeah, so you could have 16 if you just.
So here's how it will look, and essentially you will have the two divisions. You have the West Division with all the Pac-12 schools, and then you have the Eastern Division with the current iteration of the Big 12: Texas Tech, Baylor, Iowa State, Kansas, Oklahoma State, BYU, UCF, Houston.
Sure. Right.
But you may have to switch some things because you got BYU, Utah essentially in the same state. So do you put them in one division and you put someone in the other division?
A holy war in the same conference once again. That'd be fun.
Yes.
And that's assuming, we're assuming that the Big 12 would stay intact. That some of the teams would, don't bolt for example, does the SEC go after Oklahoma State down the road? We don't know. So we're just speculating. We're just going to keep it as these teams stay where they're at for now, at least the Big 12 anyway.
Right. Now here's the other part. Yeah. What does the ACC do? Because that's a whole other can of worms.
I think if you're the ACC, you got to hope that you could convince Notre Dame to stay with you and join in football. Otherwise, you could be in danger. Now, they have a grant of rights till 2036. But Brett McMurphy, who covers college athletics, mentions that if there could be a loophole where, let's say, 4 or 6 ACC teams get bolted in the same time, that could negate it. We don't know if that's true because there's not really a lot the ACC can do. Maybe they try to get a West Virginia. Do they try to get somebody on the West Coast? I don't know. Maybe. They're in a tougher spot because I think everybody believes that if the SEC eventually makes moves, some of those ACC members will become candidates to join. Yes. And hey, look, Big Ten might be looking at some of these ACC schools too. I mean, there's that fear. Does the Big Ten and the SEC join? Basically pluck the ACC. I mean, the ACC is kind of in a tough spot from that standpoint. There, I like the Big 12 and Pac-12 uniting. I think they can make the most money that way instead of trying to go against each other. Because if you go against each other, you might just be killing yourselves.
Exactly. And here's the other thing, Eric. Yeah. If the Big 12 and the Pac-12 merge, it
would be the second best conference in college softball.
Yes, behind the SEC.
Yeah.
And they will be the only conference to have teams in all 4 major time zones, which makes it very television friendly.
Doesn't the Big Ten?
No, the Big Ten would not. The Big Ten would not because they don't have a team in a mountain time zone. Right, they don't have a team in them. They have 3 of the 4. The hypothetical Big 12 Pac-12 merger will have teams in all 4 times.
So you go to 16 for softball, 20 or 22 in total for all the other for football, whatever. I mean, that's pretty strong. You would have the Arizona schools, Cal State. I mean, you would have the Pac-12, which is pretty strong without UCLA. Pretty good. Washington would be in that mix. The Big 12, that's pretty strong. The problem is it probably makes too much sense. So,
And we all know.
because I think
Sense SEN. Are you talking about sense SENSE or sense CENTS as in dollars and cents?
all the above, yes.
Okay.
Because I think Oregon and Washington probably believe they can still get into the Big Ten. So that I think what could happen. I think the Pac-12 will try to grab teams. I think the Big 12 is going to try to grab some teams. The question is, for example, can the Big 12 convince the Arizona schools to join in the Big 12, or Colorado and Utah? Although Colorado doesn't play softball, so that doesn't matter. But you know what I'm saying? Because to me, if you're the Big 12, you need to be aggressive on this. And try to poach the Pac-12. And if you're the Pac-12, you don't, your contract's coming up television-wise. So I don't know who's going to commit to them from an all-sports standpoint.
Exactly. The key date to mind for the Pac-12, June 30th, 2024. That's where the television rights deal is up. And then the next day, UCLA and USC say bye-bye and to the Big Ten.
And the Big 12 TV deal will be a couple years after. So that's the part that I'm really interested to see is what does the Pac-12 do? Who can they convince to join them if they try to stay alive? Are all those Pac-12 members going to stay, locked in, or do they look elsewhere? And that's going to be hard. It might be a year, could be 2 years. The problem that the Pac-12 has, because some have said, well, you go after the Mountain West goes. I think that's a last resort. I think if you're the Pac-12, you got to go after some of the Big 12s like Oklahoma State, etc. Because if you add San Diego State, UNLV, etc., then you're just Mountain West 2.0, babies, basically. And I don't think the majority of the Pac-12 schools in that league would be for that. Like, they would just bolt. I could be wrong, but I'm very interested to see what those two leagues. And again, maybe they're successful in convincing some of the Big 12 teams to come over, which I thought they were going to do last year. Remember, we did that whole show.
Yes.
And we thought the Big 12 was in trouble, but then they didn't. They did this alliance, shook hands. They shook hands. You saw how well that matched.
They shook hands, and then USC and UCLA shook the hands. They walked away. They turn around. Wrestling in wrestling terms, you shake somebody's hand. They go to walk away. They turn around and they give them an RKO out of nowhere. So
it's right. For those UCF, Houston, and BYU for softball will begin Big 12 play in the spring of 24, fall of 23. So
yes.
So that is a year away. It's supposed to be a year from today, as a matter of fact. Later on, we'll talk about some of the other realignment, which has gotten lost in the shuffle. I wonder why. UCLA in the Big 10. This will tick some Big 10 fans off.
Uh-oh.
But UCLA should walk over that league. Should be a walkover. The question I only have is, how is the UCLA travel? Will they get chartered? Like, UCLA is superior to everybody in the Big 10. Now, could Northwestern and a Michigan push? Yeah, sure. But the facts are, the Big Ten's a good league, but it's not at the level of the Pac-12. Just isn't. And Northwestern, we'll see if, Coach Drohan can push it. But UCLA, to me, is the heavy favorite there. I would assume and I would hope that UCLA, those players and coaches get taken care of from a flight standpoint. Like,
absolutely.
I don't want to hear, and this is not a UCLA thing. It's just across the board with college athletics and departments. I don't want to hear ever anybody crying and whining about, we're losing money because we got to travel softball to here. We got to travel volleyball to there. No, shut up. I don't want to hear it. You're all pathetic. You caused the problem. It's your fault you don't have any clue on finances. So don't take it out on the student athletes and other sports just because your beloved football didn't sell out or you only won 4 games.
And you're still paying coaches that you fired 7 years ago.
Now, I just hope the players get treated well. And we can't complain when players take off in the portal anymore, right? Like, can't take off, take the NIL money, because why can't they make some of the money that everybody in these suits are making money? Don't get after the coaches if they bolt to make money. Okay, this is a business. Then it's got to be a business across the board.
None personal, just business.
So that's where we're at. But
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
UCLA, the only thing I worry about UCLA that could even the playing field of the Big Ten is the travel situation. How does UCLA adjust to that when they have to travel? I mean, it's just going to be bizarre. How is the schedule going to work? It's just going to be really bizarre. But again, that's why I think I agree with you, Victor. I think at the end of the day, and I don't know when this is, it could be 10 minutes from now, it could be a few years from now, there will be other members of the Pac-12 joining UCLA in the in the Big Ten.
Yes,
it's just a matter of who it is. Is it Oregon, Washington? Is it Oregon? Is it Oregon, Washington, in the Arizona school? Is it Oregon, Washington, Stanford, Cal? What kind of combination will it be? But I think they will add some teams to lessen that.
I agree. It's and
that's kind of not a good thing there. UCLA, we won't get charted. We have a $100 million deficit, which is part of the reason why UCLA is making this move. That's not good. In comparison, some of the SEC schools and Big 12 schools are chartering for softball. This is the example I bring up about when I kept saying the last 2 years about Pac-12, you better wake up soon. People were focusing too much on the field and not stuff like that. Those things mattered. Here we are. That's why we're at where we're at today. So I hope the Pac-12 enjoyed their run. Maybe the Pac-12 network could become like Pac-12 Classics and just air all the World Series from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s.
Or maybe it'll be like the other channels would be off the air.
Realize now, here's the problem. So as of July 1st, 2024, all those national titles for UCLA actually is kind of in the Big Ten now.
Correct.
Kind of like
would that make the Big Ten the Conference of Champions then?
I don't know. It's not a good time for the Pac-12.
I know that's the reality of the situation.
It's really bizarre, man.
Yeah, but it's the reality. It's the reality of the world in which we live in right now in college athletics.
Yeah, I agree. And here's the other thing that's going to be an issue on the field from this travel standpoint, and because this has happened in the Big Ten. What happens if there's a snow out? How do you make those games up? Do you make them up? You can't just fly back and forth for a makeup game. Like, what are you gonna do? I it's gonna be bizarre because I went through this. I've had this experience 6 years ago. It cost UCF a conference title because they flew to Connecticut, got one game in, got snowed out for the other 2 days. So I ended up, and they lost on win percentage in the conference title because they didn't make up those 2 games. Because what are you going to do? Go back to Connecticut? It's not that cheap. So you could have a scenario where UCLA is playing at Illinois or Michigan State, and it could get washed out or snowed out, and that's it. What do you do?
Hey, but here's the thing. UCLA, they have the infrastructure in place. They will figure it out and make the transition seamlessly. And Michelle Carlin, our Bruin extraordinaire, says we'll be happy to play all home games.
Well,
yes.
That's the other aspect of this is something to keep in mind. Will the Pac-12, because remember, Pac-12 is starting a softball tournament this
next year.
That's going to be in Arizona.
And here's the funny thing. The Pac-12 tournament could be hosted potentially by a team in Arizona, again, still early in the process, that may not be in the conference in 2 years after that.
Right. Well, and I would assume that UCLA would have been in the mix to host maybe the year after that. Well, that's not going to happen probably now.
No. Washington might be in the mix to host. They may be out of the conference. Oregon.
Everything's a flux.
It's all fluid.
Yeah. It's just going to be wild. And then, if you're a UCLA fan, you have mixed emotions. I think UCLA fans understand what the business side of this, but man, I know there's a lot of UCLA fans that enjoy that trip to Arizona to play the Wildcats or enjoy to play Cal or what happens.
Stanford.
And then the other thing is, and this is always a topic when it comes to when teams leave a conference. For example, will UCLA and Cal play in non-conference? Will they play Washington and not? If they're not, I mean, though, there's just so many questions that it's just kind of wild. I don't know, man.
I'll put it to you this way. When Texas A&M bolted the Big 12 to join the SEC, I believe he's either the Texas A&M or Texas AD said that they would not play the other school in any non-conference ever, and they have not done so. So
here's the other thing I just realized. I wonder how this will affect UCLA's non-conference schedule from the standpoint of if you're going to be traveling that much to the Big Ten. I mean, I don't know.
I honestly wouldn't.
Do they just stay in the state? Do they stay in the state?
I think they will. I can see Stanford staying on the schedule. I can see Cal stay on the schedule. I can see a lot of Fresno State, San Diego State. Have those schools stay.
Mary Nutter.
Mary Nutter, you're correct.
I can see UCLA is scheduled to play in Clearwater this upcoming year. Do they still, when they get invited, do they still play Clearwater when they're in the Big Ten, considering all the travel they got to do? Who knows?
And Eric, we talked about this.
Might be the warmest area outside of California they get to play all year.
But Eric, we're forgetting about something very, very important.
Sure.
UCLA could now be a part of the ACC Big Ten Challenge. So you could see. So how about this? So you could potentially see UCLA representing the Big Ten taking on. Let's get weird on a Friday night. Let's have you talk about the UCLA Arizona rivalry. Let's have UCLA representing the Big Ten take on Arizona representing the ACC Big Ten Challenge in Clearwater. How about that in 3 years? Let's get weird. Why not?
I don't know. That could be a way UCLA plays in Clearwater if you're a part of that type of tournament.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
I don't know. It's just I don't know. It's wild. I don't know.
Paul 5 months said it best before we move on. Nothing is improbable in college athletics right now.
No, that's the truth. That's the truth. I mean, we could speculate all we want. I mean, this could look completely different a year from now. It could look different.
And it will. It will.
Probably looks different a few months from now. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. Hopefully, I mean, Jim Munoz makes an interesting point. Talks about how maybe now Lisa Fernandez could get paid. I mean, that's true. Maybe the
pay to go.
Yeah, as long as they do that and don't pay for the football team that plays in a half-empty Rose Bowl every year. I mean,
yeah, it goes to again. Tweets at Eric Lopez Elo.
I'm just saying, what UCLA softball is the most successful program in that darn university. It ain't football. Basketball, I know people argue men's basketball, but they haven't been. I think
consistently great.
I think softball's better. Actually, I do. I think softball's been much more consistent over the decades than football than basketball has been. So anyway, that's the story on the UCLA front, Big Ten, and obviously it's going to dominate. There's media days going to happen in football. There'll be a lot of conversations, and we'll try to keep track of this for you as time goes on, Victor. But there's been other, believe it or not, one of the reasons we were going to do this show wasn't necessarily for this. Because there's been a lot.
It just so happened to pop up.
Yeah. Oh my God. Lots going on in college softball. As we, it's now, Justin McLeod is in Colorado. We'll hear from him at some point. We think technical issues could prevent it from coming, right, Victor? We've been there, done that.
Exactly.
When you're in Colorado, altitude can play a factor with connections. But go ahead and bring out. Because there's other topics to get into here in softball, and you have a special, a special toy, material that you're bringing back.
A special tool, backed by popular demand that we ran during our season preview way back in February, which seems like ages ago. Our wheel of softball, and if you can see, ladies and gentlemen, we have several topics on the wheel for this evening. We're talking. So we got more realignment. We have new rules that could potentially be on the pike. we have announcement of a guest. We have head coaching hires, assistant coaching hires, the transfer portal, pop potpourri, which means we get to talk about other things that I ain't mentioned. Oh, and guest choice. Well, when we had if Justin McLeod was on, he was going to be able to select, but since he's not here, if that gets selected, then well, we will choose. So let us spin the wheel and see what we will be discussing next on the show, which is I'm sure is going to be fascinating for all of us. Come on, wheel, spin now.
Yeah, what's going on with your wheel?
The wheel's broken with the news about tech. The wheel got broken by the news of UCLA going to the Big 12, to the Big 10. I broke it the wheel. I broke it the wheel. We're going to go. Hold on. Let me try a different way, folks. It's always. Come on, work.
Oh wow!
Oh.
Live streaming, everybody.
Live streaming, ladies and gentlemen, ain't nothing like it.
Oh. This worked so well when we did it.
I know.
Before the
there we go. There we go. Oh, there we go. And we are going to the transfer portal, Mr. Lopez.
That's correct. So that's a heck of a wheel. The transfer portal. Yeah, that has become the big story of the offseason, certainly in Colorado, among others. Lots of news going out there, even up to the last hour coming up there, Victor. Let's start with some of the most recent stuff that's coming out. Just today there's been a very busy day in the portal, let alone the whole week. Obviously, Thursday night, Lexi Kilfoyle, the former Alabama pitcher, announcing she's going to Oklahoma State, Victor. That was the one we were waiting for. There were other schools in the mix. I'm going to start there because now you mentioned it on social media. Kenny Gajewski, you felt like he always gets an arm, and he gets one here in Kilfoyle.
Well, Kilfoyle coming off season surgery. She says that she's feeling great, and she will be at Oklahoma State. She has 2 more years of eligibility, so it'll be Kilfoyle and Maxwell, the 1-2 punch to try to lead the Cowgirls back to Oklahoma City. And look, very quietly, Oklahoma State once again doing their magic in the transfer portal. We talked about Lexi Kilfoyle joining Oklahoma State. We already mentioned another transfer that he added early on, and then he got an all Big Ten player from Purdue to join Oklahoma State. So that's 3 impact players joining Coach Kenny Gajewski at Oklahoma State. So the Cowgirls are loaded and ready for bear. But, and we'll get back to all the talk going on in the portal in just a moment.
Well, the big news that just broke about an hour ago on Extra Innings Softball. Arizona's Charlize Palacios. No wonder we haven't heard from Justin. He's busy breaking news.
Yes.
There it is. Charlize Palacios and Janelle Mionio both entering the transfer portal for Arizona. By the way, today is the last day a player can enter the portal without needing a waiver wire and sitting out a year, or just a waiver wire general to play next year. So blockbuster news here to end the week for Arizona. Tough week there for them on that regard, losing Palacios and Mionio. It's stunning. It really is. That's my reaction. It's stunning to see those 2 names. Haley Lee of Texas A&M joined the portal a couple of days ago. It was very bizarre. She did a national interview talking about her being on the fence, what she was going to do, and then 24 hours later, she joined the portal. But those 3 names that I just mentioned with Lee, Mionio, and Palacios now, that will be where the focus is for the next few weeks. Obviously, Sydney Sanders of Arizona State is still in the portal. A lot of speculation. Could be a decision there any day now. But, Victor, that's a tough loss for Arizona there. To be honest, I'm still kind of head-scratching on that one.
Yeah, especially with the run that the Wildcats went on this offseason under Caitlin Lowe, making it all the way to Oklahoma City and making it to the semifinals. And what I'm fascinated about, Eric, is the caliber, the athletes that they get so highly recruited by these schools, and then 2 years later they put their name in a portal. I'm fascinated, and I'm sure we're gonna need to have a whole other podcast to kind of
Well, let's
talk
bring in the
about
man who broke the story. I think he's
what we
joining us
have him.
Yeah, he says he's joining us here momentarily. He says he's in.
Okay, let's
Joining
bring
in.
him on
So
then.
let's bring him in. There he is, Justin McLeod of Extra Innings Softball. Do you hear us, Justin?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
There you go. A little
Yay!
low, but we can hear you.
There he is.
See, Victor, you want to give Justin advice? See, this is similar to when we did the show after the SEC championship game on Championship Saturday, where you were driving back from Gainesville. So now
Yes.
Justin is driving from Colorado, where he's been there the whole week. Any advice you want to give Justin as far as driving while doing a show, as you masterfully mastered there?
Keep your eyes on the road and make sure you're talking at the same time.
There you go. He's laughing. All right. All right, Justin, let's bring you in here. You just broke the news about an hour ago. Charlize Palacios and Mionyo entering the portal for Arizona. What can you share with us on this kind of a last hour breaking news here?
Well, the rumor's been going for the last day or so, and then Mionyo and Palacios' names both pop into the portal today. From what I understand, it sounds very sudden on a lot of fronts, unexpected from the people I've talked to around Tucson and the Pac-12 and such. It doesn't seem to have a defined reason for happening. You know, normally there's, okay, well, there was a coaching move or disagreement issue or, you know, anything in those veins. It doesn't sound like it was any of those things. It sounds truthfully rather random and sudden on for both players.
That's crazy. I mean, two marquee Arizona players entering the portal there, Justin. And this is at the heels of Haley Lee of Texas A&M entering the portal.
Yeah, Lee was somebody I expected from the moment that coaching change happened, truth be told. I think she played it smart, kind of see what the transfer market looks like, know what, you know, kind of could go into it from her perspective, knowing who had openings, who might be interested, was she going to be interested in who might be interested. Kind of, she was able to play. I don't want to call it play a game because I mean, you know, I think she played it smart for her part. But you know, go in, coaching change. Obviously, some things are very different with the coaching change, and so that one didn't surprise me honestly nearly as much as the two Arizona players. That one, it takes a lot to flabbergast me, but those Arizona players going in has come pretty close.
Yeah, that's an understatement, isn't it, Victor? I mean, it's just kind of wild there, to say the least, on what happened there. Justin, what's been the talk in Colorado as far as the transfer portal? What's been the buzz there?
I think we're finally getting to the point where the problems with the transfer portal are beginning to seriously outweigh the positives. You know, there have always been, I've said it from the beginning, there are positives and negatives to the transfer portal. I really don't think anybody can dispute that there are some of both. The issue comes in when the negatives start outweighing the positives. If the positives far outweigh the negatives, obviously that's a wonderful thing. I think we're starting to get to that point and a general consensus, beginning stages of a general consensus, that we're getting to that point where the negatives are really outweighing the positives. Because, you know, it's great that if somebody's in a bad situation, a situation needs to be changed, a coaching change, anything like that, it's great that the opportunity is there for them to go and, you know, not have to be at the mercy of the coach that they have a genuine issue with or something like that. Kids who, you know, or players who have playing time issues, you know, it's great that, you know, maybe they have an opportunity to change where they're going. You know what? There's mixed bag on that one, but, you know, let's go positive. Let's say it's good that they have a chance to get real playing time. But then you get to the negatives where players on a team, because maybe their team hasn't picked up the number of star transfers that another team has. Maybe their team's not doing what they think their team should be doing, and all of a sudden, oh well, you know what? I'm not on board anymore. And that's an example, a fairly recent example. But I think the general consensus is becoming more and more that there are more issues with the portal at this present time that need to be fixed than there are positives to be embraced.
Anybody have a solution, though? I mean, what's the solution?
Well, the problem is, Eric, is that NIL. People are utilizing NIL, and they're literally looking at the landscape, and they're treating the transfer portal like free agency. And I'll give you an analogy. College softball players are using the current year as them being the last year on an NBA contract. And they're using the transfer portal as their way of free agency. And they're looking at the market, seeing, okay, what situation fits for me in terms of playing time, NIL, close to the family. Now, look, you're going to have those rare exceptions where you're going to have athletes go back, try to get a collegiate degree and go to nursing school, be close to the family, things of that nature. That's not what Justin's talking about. We're talking about athletes who have tremendous seasons, freshman of the year caliber seasons, and then all of a sudden you're putting your name in the transfer portal. That is just, that's kind of where I'm really worried about where we're really going in terms of the sport.
Well, I think you make an interesting point, because I've heard this criticism of the Pac-12 and the NIL. There's some schools that they don't compete with the SECs of the world or other conferences. Kyle Peterson, who's obviously the college baseball analyst at ESPN, I actually listened to him on the D1 baseball podcast they did to wrap up Omaha. And he said the similar things to what you said. He was concerned about the West Coast baseball and the future of West Coast baseball because of all the NIL money that's been thrown out there by schools in the SEC and other conferences, and the Pac-12 and the West Coast have kind of been behind the eight ball, especially in the Pac-12 in some of those instances. And just kind of, are they going to be able to compete with teams like the SEC and now the Big Ten that invest money in a lot of their sports? And I think that could be applied to softball as well. So I think you and Kyle Peterson are kind of on the same wavelength on that. Did we lose Justin there?
I think we got him back. Hey, Justin, you back with us, sir? I guess not.
See, that was the most underrated thing about your appearance, Victor, when you were driving back from Gainesville. We never really lost connection with you.
Yeah, which is remarkable given the areas that I was driving through on I-95.
Well, I guess it's a little different than wherever Justin's driving.
I guess
in Colorado. So. Maybe the altitude's affecting all of that. I think I'm hearing. He's sending me a message. He said he got knocked off.
Okay.
Got knocked out. Maybe. Maybe it was all the players that are in the portal. Like, hey man, don't be ripping us. All right, don't be ripping the portal.
Exactly. But
it's too funny. But yeah, I mean, that's going to be very interesting there, to say the least. Who are some of the other moves that caught your eye?
Well, one that I found fascinating was Clemson, because Clemson added a trio of transfers in the portal, including Caroline Jacobson from Duke. She'll be spending her grad year at Clemson, and also Really Davenport, who I got to see up Florida Gulf Coast, she'll be spending her final year at Clemson. So Coach John Rittman is really getting things geared up. Regional Final 2021, Super Regional Appearance in 2022, and you can kind of guess, Eric, what that next step eventually is going to be for that Clemson program in 2023, and they're getting themselves some firepower to make that a reality for the Tigers.
Yeah, I agree. Look, let's not forget Alex Taraka to Oklahoma. I know that was like right literally after the World Series, a couple days later. I still
Yeah,
think
a lot of Torres, who Oklahoma made official that she's going to be joining them for 2023, and we're hearing that they're in the mix for some other names as well. So,
how about Texas getting Mac Morgan of Arizona State?
yeah, big
Big
acquisition
arm.
for Texas. Yes.
Big arm there in the portal there. So there's still some names out there. There's still a lot of names out there. But moves being made, and I think Texas has gotten better, getting more the pitcher Morgan there. We're still waiting on Lindsay Lopez from Arizona State. Where does she end up? Don't forget Brooke Giannis going to UCLA. That's a huge move for the
Mm-hmm.
Bruins. I mean, the funny part is there could be some Pac-12 schools mad at UCLA, but I have a feeling they're not going to be able to do anything about it when it gets to
No.
conference play this upcoming year.
Yes.
For them, because with that combination of Faremo and Giannis, if they, I'm hearing they might be in the mix for a bat too. If they add another bat, they're going to get Aaliyah Jordan and back next year from injury. I think UCLA's had a very good to get Giannis was huge for them from a pitching depth standpoint. So I think UCLA are winners in this. Oklahoma, I think Oklahoma State, you mentioned earlier, Victor, I agree with you. They've had a great transfer portal season. And then Arkansas, they picked up Foreman from Duke.
Yeah, Christina Foreman.
I think Georgia's had a pretty good offseason too, adding Walters from
Duke. Walters, yeah, that's good night there as well.
So I think those are some of the ones, some under the radar moves. UCF getting Sarah Willis from Washington, who was the number 7 prospect in the 2019 class of extra inning softball, a two-way player in Washington, an arm. And then also one that you kind of mentioned before all this started, and that's Jazz Severs, who's now obviously Jazz Williams, who's married, Jasmine, going from Oregon to UCF, Victor.
Yeah, that's
did you ever think when you were in Boca Raton in 2005 calling UCF that you would see the day where Pac-12 marquee good talented Pac-12 players coming to UCF?
No, I would never thought that day would be possible. And here's the interesting thing, Eric. 2 things. You mentioned number 1, that Jazz Williams married, had a child. She gets to be around Coach Bear, who has 4 kids of her own. So she kind of gets that understanding of what it's like to be a mom and balancing softball and motherhood. Secondly, let's remember, her teammate Haley Cruz is just 45 minutes up the road in Vieira playing for the USSSA Pride. So I'm hopeful that there is a reunion and they can make some more banging TikTok videos.
Are you calling for it? Well, you're kind of the de facto voice of the
Bernie no. Bernie Gunther is the voice of the Pride. WPF. Thank you very much.
So are you like Joe Davis and Bernie's the Joe Buck, where you do more games, but Buck kind of is the back in the Fox baseball?
Eric, stop stirring up trouble. Stop stirring up trouble.
Fair enough.
Stop stirring up trouble.
You know what
okay.
that means? All right. Let's spin the wheel.
That's a good time for us to spin the wheel. Yes, we need to spin the wheel because you.
By the way, Justin's having tech issues in Colorado, Victor. So maybe next time you can show him the ropes technology-wise. I don't know.
Okay,
so let's just go ahead and spin the wheel.
Let's spin the wheel. Let's see what's next. What kind of chicanery we can get involved with the wheel this time.
Oh, thank you, Steve B. I appreciate having a soft spot for UCF coming to Norman. Hey, could be a conference series in a couple years.
Could be a conference series. Let us spin the wheel here. If the wheel wants to spin at all tonight.
Who's having more tech issues, the wheel or Justin tonight? Holy smokes!
Yes. Hey, we talked about the realignment to start the show. Why don't we have more realignment to continue this in the circle live?
Yeah, Victor. I mean, that's the other thing. July 1st, obviously, is a very big deal in college athletics. A lot of new members in going to different conferences, not talking about UCLA, but there's other ones that we've talked about throughout the show that's now official.
Officially official. And in all, Eric, there are 21 new teams that are joining conferences in 2022. And what's remarkable, Eric, there are 5 teams, the most that I can recall in quite some time, making the jump from Division II to Division I. You have Lindenwood, Queens, Southern Indiana, who's just 3 years removed from winning a national championship, Stonehill, and Texas A&M Commerce. Texas A&M Commerce lost a ton of their talent and their interim head coach who stayed in Division II. She went to Texas Women's, and of course the Colonial they lost James Madison, but added Hampton, Monmouth, North Carolina A&T, and Stony Brook to make them without what you will with that. Now, also, you have you have some other schools in taking place. As looks like I'm having some technical issues right now myself. Hold on here.
Wow, everybody
Stay
trying
with
to get.
me.
Well, let me. While you do
Everybody,
that, yeah, everybody's
yes,
got their tech. Here's what catches my eye here a little bit.
yes, sir.
As I look at this, your beloved, the
Mm-hmm.
Ace Sun, which you know very well.
Yes, I do.
Austin P is joining the Ace Sun. All right, that's a pretty interesting move there.
And then Queens, another one of those teams that's moving from Division II to Division I.
I mean, those are your two worlds colliding. How is Queens going to fare in the Ace Sun, Victor?
Well, Queens was kind of like that middle of the pack team in the SAC prior to them joining Division I and the Ace Sun. It's going to be fascinating to see how, because the Ace Sun is going to be 14 teams for only 1 year. And then
read the teams, because it's fair. The Ace Sun is definitely one of those conferences that's gone through a lot of comings and goings, and it's kind of confused, hard to keep up. So what, as of today, now officially, July 1st, I feel like I'm Ernie Johnson inside the NBA when he's playing the game with Charles Barkley. Is who is, when he's trying to guess who's the player on the roster.
Who did he play for?
Yeah, who did he play for? Who is playing for in the Ace Sun? That's my question to you.
Well, and we're like EJ Zeno Saturday night, we're unsullied by sponsorship since 2015. The last speaking of unsponsored softball journalism.
Sure.
So essentially with the Ace Sun, they're going to be playing a 14-team league. They haven't officially announced the schedule format, or the conference tournament format, which is going to be interesting in terms of who is going to be hosting the tournament.
Liberty how many teams are going to be in that tournament, and how many teams?
That's the other question. We'll be learning on the upcoming weeks and months. And Eric, we've heard from our sources, the conference has already tabbed a school in mind to be hosted a tournament in 2023, but we will wait until that announcement is made official before sharing in that. So the Ace Sun, they got 14 schools, as we mentioned, playing in the league this year. Now, what's going to happen is that July 1st next year, Liberty, Jacksonville State, they're off to Conference USA, along with New Mexico State and Sam Houston State. Now, keep in mind, now here's the interesting thing as we wait for this to load. As of the top, the original plan was the Ace Sun was only going to have 13 schools. Austin P. Queens literally came out of nowhere, like in late January, early February, was when I started hearing the news about Queens in North Carolina. So Queens became that 14th team. The reason why is that they want to offset losing Liberty and Jacksonville State to Conference USA next year. So they wanted to keep that 12-team format. So there will be that 1 year where the conference is just going to have 14 teams. So you got Austin P, you got Queens, the new schools, you have Jacksonville State, you have Liberty. You have the Florida schools, Stetson, North Florida, Jacksonville, Florida Gulf Coast. Then you have Kennesaw State, North Alabama, you have Lipscomb, you have Eastern Kentucky, Bellarmine. That's your Ace Sun right there.
Do you think they're going to do it within two divisions? I would assume, right? 2 of 7, maybe. I mean, how is this going to work with 14?
The question
if it's up to you, how many teams make the conference tournament?
If it was me, I would put 12 team. I would put 14 team conference. I would probably do 12-team single elimination. Do it like the SEC. Top 4 seeds get a bye. Then you have 5 through 12. 5 play 12, 6 and 11, 7 and 10, 8 and 9. That's your first round. Then you have the quarterfinals, semifinals, and championship. Because how the ASUN figured out who got in the tournament, you needed algebra, calculus, finite math, infinite math, and all sorts of formulas which made no sense to me whatsoever. So you need to make it simpler. 12 teams. If you go 2 divisions, you have the top 6 teams get in. The last place team in each division is out. If you go by divisions. And the question is, Eric, if you don't go by divisions, how do you determine who plays who?
I would be surprised if they didn't do the 2 divisions.
That's
so we'll
the
see
thing.
how that goes. We'll see how that goes. The other big one too, by the way, is the Sun Belt. This has been big. James Madison is now a member of the Sun Belt, no longer in the Colonial. Marshall is now in the Sun Belt. Southern Miss is in the Sun Belt as well. So the Sun Belt, this is going to be a stacked softball league. JMU leaving the Colonial. Hampton is in the Colonial, as you mentioned earlier. So those are the 2 big stories. To me, the Sun Belt and the ASUN, very significant, looking different, and very interesting to see how they're going to look on paper come this upcoming 2023 college softball season, Victor. I think that's the Sun Belt. Kind of a disappointment this past year being a 1-bid league. You got the Cajuns with JMU. You got Marshall in the league with Troy. New coach Eric Knoll, who you just recently interviewed here on In the Circle. You can listen to that on the archive podcast. South Alabama still in there. Texas State. They got a nice team too. Ricky Worded there. They were one of the first 4 out last year. So that'll be all eyes on the Sun Belt and the ASUN among all the other moves. All right, spin the wheel again. Let's spin the wheel.
All right, spin the wheel. It's time to spin the wheel. Let's go. Hopefully the wheel will be more kind to me as opposed to what happened last time.
That's right.
Well, you know what? The wheel's acting up. You know what? The wheel's acting up.
The wheel.
What do you want to talk about now? We talk about the portal.
Coaching moves. Let's go coaching moves.
Yeah.
And speaking of the ASUN, let's just keep it there then, Victor.
Why not?
Because I broke the story this morning on Extra Innings.
You did?
Jeff Conrad promoted to be the new head coach at North Florida, taking over from Marcy Higgs, who would kind of left the UNF program, kind of getting out of the industry a little bit. Jeff Conrad's been a long-time assistant at UNF, but he was named the head coach today. Victor, this reminds me a lot of Stetson last year. Remember Stetson? Frank Griffin retired. Yes. Took a long time to see who would be the head coach, speculation on who was in the mix. And then Shelly Robinson ended up being promoted. I feel like a similar boat here with UNF. I like the move a lot. I think this was the right move. UNF had a great year. I'm going to defer to you on this. You covered the league really closely.
Yes.
But they were the second best team in the ASUN, lost to the juggernaut that is Liberty in the ASUN championship. But they keep Jeff there, who has been kind of the recruiter there. And now I think that'll help UNF continue to be in the mix in the ASUN. Your thoughts on the move?
Well, the offense for UNF had this is probably one of the best years for UNF in a post-Navia Penrod era. Getting to the ASUN championship game before losing to Liberty. They had a top 5 pitching staff in 2022. They're going to turn a lot of those arms in 2023. The biggest thing for Coach Conrad, who does he bring in to round out his staff? And particularly, since he likes to work with the offense, who does he bring in as his pitching coach? That's always going to be one of those fascinating hires with Coach Conrad and keeping that continuity with UNF.
And does he keep the pitching coach that they had? Because remember, you saw that UNF was actually quietly one of the best pitching staffs in the country and in the ASUN. So, baby, who knows? But that's a very valid question, a valid point. But I really like that move. I think that's a very under-the-radar move with Jeff Conrad staying there as far as the head coach over there. So I thought that was moving. And then AJ Daltrey, kind of gets named the UAB head coach on Friday as well, kind of an under the radar move on that one. Obviously, the big transaction in the coaching circle was Trisha Ford going from Arizona State to Texas A&M, and then Megan Bartlett becoming the head coach at Arizona State. That's probably that's probably going to be, to this point, the headliners when we look back at the 2022 head coaching carousel is probably. But what else? Anything else jumps out to you on the head coaching front?
In terms of the head coaching side, nothing too interesting in terms of my perspective, because you have to realize now with the dominoes for UNF and Arizona State done, now it's all about rounding out your staffs, and that's a nice segue to the assistant coaching carousel. And well, you thought we had some big time news in terms of the transfer portal. A big time name is returning back to softball, and Sydney Romero. It was announced on Extra Rating Softball that she will be an assistant coach under Marissa Young and Duke, and will serve as their hitting coach and working with the infielders. So,
big move there, taking over for Bloomer, who is now the South Carolina hitting coach. Bracamonte, by the way, the other assistant at Duke, was named the Toledo head coach.
Yes.
And let's not forget the D2 impact in the head coaching circle, as you know, with obviously Eric Newell going to Troy, among others. And then, of course, Jordan Clark, the Ohio State assistant, becoming the head coach at FAU. I don't want to forget that mention, but you're right. Sydney Romero going to being the Duke assistant, and interesting move, getting her first full-time position there. We'll see how she does as an assistant there at Duke, who is not afraid to take chances on great players and youth experience. Remember, Marissa Young had Lacey Waldrop not too long ago on the staff as pitching coach at Duke.
She did.
Not afraid. Speaking of Oklahoma, by the way, Kristen Zaleski is the new Texas assistant. That was announced late Friday. She was the volunteer coach and was the first base coach for Oklahoma this year. She now goes to Texas to be Mike White's number 2 assistant, taking over for Megan Bartlett. So, once again, as I've said, if you're hanging out with Patty Gasso,
you're going to get a job.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. To me, the big news in the assistant is not really somebody that's going somewhere. It's somebody that's staying. Jimmy Kaulitis staying as the Arizona State assistant. That's been reported by X Rating Softball. That's a big one for Megan Bartlett. They did announce their pitching coach, Manley, who was her pitching coach at Ball State. So her staff is pretty much locked in. But Jimmy Kaulitis staying at Arizona State, I think that's another headliner from the assistant standpoint. There's still a lot of assistant jobs open, by the way. So we're far from done as far as that's concerned in that regard. So, that's something to monitor as well from the assistants. And then Jeff Cottrell leaving Oklahoma State to be the Missouri heading coach. Coach Gajewski promotes from within with Glore to be the hitting coach at Oklahoma State. But it's interesting. There's a lot of hitting coaches jobs open. I don't know if that's just coincidence, one of those things or what, but there are still a lot of assistants. There's still some head coaching jobs open. Memphis is open. I'm hearing they're going after a big name assistant in the sport that might surprise some people. It's in that big conference down south. I won't mention what it is, but you can. That's a hint. We'll see if that materializes or not. We'll see what Memphis ends up with. Trying to figure it out. I love it.
I think I might know who. I think I know some names potentially.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Sharonda McDonald, by the way, Michigan State. So much talk about the Big Ten. Sharonda McDonald, the new head coach at Michigan State, there as well. So a lot of assistant jobs open too, by the way, in the Big Ten. We'll see how that gets filled out. But so those are some of the headliners in the assistants and in the head coaching front. But yeah, I mean, we're still got some more other moves to go from the coaching circle standpoint there. But there's always surprises, as they say. I think we got about 12 schools left, maybe 12 schools left looking for a head coach. With the biggest one probably being Memphis right now. probably the big
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. And that could set off another set of dominoes depending on who Memphis hires as their head coach.
Yeah, let's not forget Craig Snyder, head coach at Texas Tech. He's got to fill out his staff as well. So that's going to be very interesting what he comes up with over there in Lubbock on that staff. But what else we got? I'm so lost right now without the wheel. I'm so looking forward to the wheel. I feel like I'm Pat Sajak without a wheel right now.
Well, as long as you don't call me Vanna White, we're good.
Now we're good.
May I? Would you like to buy this L? Okay, so there's been some talk on the softball rules committee about the big topic during the 2022 season was the need to implement a safety base at first base. There are a lot of collisions. Alabama head coach Patrick Murphy has been a big proponent of that, and they will be bringing that for a discussion during a committee meeting later on this month. Are you in favor of the safety base? You've been very passionate in this regard, Mr. Lopez. Are you for or against it?
My concern, we give umpires a lot of hard time over missing calls and stuff. And we're making it even more complicated now by having a second bag. Like we're just begging now for more missed calls. That's my concern. Now I understand the safetiness. The international game has used this for a while. Although there's some rumors the international game is trying to get rid of it. Who knows if that'll actually happen or not. I just hope it doesn't complicate the game, Victor, right? Isn't that been a constant? We've had guests on. One of the issues I think everybody agrees with when it comes to, we don't really help the umpires when it comes to this stuff, because sometimes a lot of this stuff is more complicated than it really should be, right? And so now this is an extra layer to keep in mind. Oh, did she have the bag right? What about this bag? There could be some confusion. We'll see. But look, it's meant well, obviously, because the goal is to keep people safe. But that's how the obstruction rule got created, was for safety, and we saw what's happened with that. That's my concern. That's it.
It's kind of ridiculous with the obstruction rule. Yeah, can we figure out a clear and defined definition of obstruction first, and then we can work on things like the safety base? And how about this? Obstruction and illegal pitches. Clear up those two things.
Yeah.
Just clear up those two things. And we as softball fans will be happy. You can worry about everything else in 2023. Get those two things right first.
I agree with that. All right, let's take some questions here before we wrap up. Let's take some questions from the audience, because there's been a lot of comments on this one. For example, I see do you Jim Munoz coming in. Do you think Lisa Fernandez will ever leave UCLA and get paid her worth as a head coach in the Big Ten? I know it's so weird.
Well, you have intel about the situation, Mr. Lopez. Go ahead and answer that question.
I mean, other schools have reached out to Lisa about being a head coach. Even this offseason, her name was floated. Obviously, she's still at UCLA. I mean, if you would have asked me 24 hours ago, I would say no way would I ever see Lisa Fernandez leaving UCLA. It would be like UCLA leaving the Pac-12.
Wait.
So I don't know anymore. I don't know what she gets paid, but she probably should get paid whatever. Yeah, they just take care of her. I agree with the sentiment there. I mean, she is still, I think, one of the best pitching minds in the sport. Obviously, in the conversation for the GOAT of softball. I don't know. I've interviewed her once. I don't know what her mindset is as far as, does she want to be a head coach? Does she not? I don't know. It'd just be weird to see her in another uniform in college that's not UCLA. Just with Bruin colors. It just would be weird. But she has been. Teams have reached out to her. She has interviewed in the past, from what I've been told, for head coaching jobs, but obviously nothing to the point that would take her from leaving Westwood. So, And I would assume with all the money that UCLA will be starting to get, that some of that maybe at some point will go towards the staff in general over there, but we'll see. That's a good question. It's a very good question.
We got a rule suggestion in the chat, Eric.
Go for it. Let's go. Let's get. This is the fan section here. What do we got? What else we got?
This is the fan section here. I saw someone calling for Michelle Carlin. We need a pitch clock.
Well, not as much as baseball does. Holy smokes. Did anybody see any of that college baseball? My goodness. Can we just throw a pitch? Just throw a pitch. Let's go. I mean, these games are going 3.5, 4. You call college baseball, Victor, with all due respect. As somebody's what is going on over there?
Hey, I don't know what college baseball game you talk about. The ones I'll be doing be like 2 hours and 35 minutes.
There's a couple of jokes I can use, but I won't.
Thank you.
I'll just say that in Omaha,
leave it be. Hey, that means more airtime for our friend Chris Budden. We're all for it. We're fans of Chris Budden. We hope she comes on the podcast someday.
God, that was beautiful. Yes, I agree. I'm for the pitch clock in softball. And they've been trying to tinker, hey, they have a wristband. They figure their theory is they could.
If anything, the wristband makes it worse because they look at the dugout for 10 seconds. They look at the coach.
I agree. The part of the problem though is the pitch clock. I mean, it's the visits. A lot of more mound visits than normal. I mean, they've kind of trying to cut that down a little bit. I think softball is okay. I don't get a sense that people are complaining about the pace as much in softball. I mean, Victor, you and I were at the Orlando Regional. That Michigan Regional Championship game went over. I don't know if people realize it went basically 3 hours, but I don't think anybody noticed because there was so much going on, right? Whereas baseball, I think it's more. You can tell me you've called both sports this year.
There's less action. There's less action in between pitches in baseball than there is in softball.
Correct. By the way, folks, if you haven't realized by now, Victor is the jack of all trades. He calls baseball. He calls softball. He's called basketball, men's and women's.
I would just like a school to give me an opportunity to be the guy.
Football, I'm gonna keep talking until you stay out of trouble. Football, call basketball, volleyball. Anyway. I
would say Shirley Caesar, you name it, but I ain't singing a hat. It ain't Thanksgiving yet, so that's the only time I utter those words.
How does UCLA softball facilities compare to Big Ten? That's a great question. That's been a topic, not just at UCLA, but some of the Pac-12 facility. But UCLA maybe not as up to the level that it should be, and hopefully maybe part of this.
They need to improve.
Well, the money they're going to get to Big Ten, I think.
Well, are they going to use it for softball?
I hope.
I know.
I hope.
I hope so too.
Oh, look at this. Fang Nai saying, I enjoyed Vic's calls on the Pride games. See?
Thank you.
Agree.
Well, it was more, an
update. When is the next time you're calling a Pride game?
Well, I won't be calling a Pride game, but I will be calling Smash It Sports versus Team Mexico, 4th of July from Vieira. So 4th of July at Vieira, yours truly, and a phenomenal announcer to be tweeted out shortly.
Yeah, you're like name dropping there. Alex Powers, Alexis Bennett, right? You
got the
celebs going over there.
I do what I can. I believe it is 6 p.m. Possibly fireworks after the game. UAA, WProFastPitch.com/live. You can get the date. You can get a season subscription for the low price of $40.
Look at this. People want to know. You get to call an Allo shot. Are you going to top Chris Plank's call of an Allo homer?
I cannot top the great Chris Plank.
Will you ask him for advice? Will you reach out? Will you reach out for Allo?
Well, I listened to his broadcast many a time on the Sooner Sports Network by Learfield. hopefully I will do him justice if I get to, if Jocelyn plays and she does hit a home run. So that's going to be. By the way, the Smash Sports Vipers, they are a very strong team. Of course, Gianna Mancha, who you know very well, Eric from UCF. Mary Copo is there. They have Fale Lua. That's a super regional shirt once again making an appearance on the show. They also Tati Forbes from NC State. Morgan Howe from Arizona State. They're a very loaded team. So I'm looking forward to see them against Team Mexico on the 4th of July, which I'm sure is going to be fun to watch. And I may have some more broadcasts coming up down the line. So just stay tuned for that.
A little tease.
Little tease. Don't want to spoil it for the people right now.
Does Natasha Wally have any interest in coaching? She just had a kid. And I know that she's been calling games on the Pac-12 network, did a regional in 2021 for ESPN. So at least in the States, I don't know if she has interest in coaching in the States. I know I think she's still involved in she
has a foundation. Remember, she has a foundation, the Natasha Wally Foundation.
Yeah, I don't think she wants to be interested in the coaching there. People worried about Oklahoma losing people. Trust me, nobody's going to be worried about OU losing people. I know the
cover will not be bare.
With respect, I know Coleman entered the portal. It ain't Jada Coleman. So
no, it ain't that Coleman, folks.
Right, so
y'all be
respect. Fine. Good talented player. I mean, so we'll see how that goes on the OU front. People asking about the Arizona State staff. Trisha Ford, obviously the head coach. You have Jeff Harger coming with her as the hitting coach. And then, of course, Joe Guthrie leaving UAB's head coaching position, Victor, to become the assistant there. That's how the UAB job opened.
Yes.
It went to Daltrey, who's was the Alabama Junior College Coach of the Year in Alabama. So a region tie there. But interesting. Yes. We've had D2 coaches hired in D1 and a junior college coach being hired in Division I.
Well, it tells you the athletic departments are thinking outside of the box, trying to give some fresh minds and some fresh ideas to really invigorate and inject some enthusiasm into their program.
Questions. What are your thoughts about the increased ratings for Athletes Unlimited AUX in San Diego the last few weeks? It's the power of the 4-letter network, number one. What a difference that makes, right? But I like the fact they came out right after the World Series because people are still in the softball mix. You just had the World Series. It was quick. You know what I mean? It was like a couple of weeks. It's
2 weeks.
Right, and it's also right at the time where there's not as much going on, right? Like at that point, there's big college baseball, hockey, whatever, but there's not as much going on. The time slots were pretty good. ESPN, obviously, and we mentioned this many times on the podcast, ESPN gave up on Major League Baseball as far as broadcasting them during the week.
On weekdays.
So on the weekdays, thank you. And so they have a lot of time for content, and I think that's where Athletes Unlimited jumps in there. It'll be interesting to see what the numbers do when they come back in Rosemont for the lengthy season in late July and August. That's going to be interesting. Because that's going up against training camp and NFL stuff.
Yes, exactly. And I do want to stress there will be some games that'll be on linear ESPN, and there'll be some Athletes Unlimited games that'll be on ESPN Plus. So make sure you go to auprosports.com, check that schedule to find out what games are going to be on linear ESPN and also on Plus.
But I think if all parties have to be happy, all things could consider.
Oh, yes.
From the standpoint of I think they had about 140,000 viewers was the most watched game they had, and that was like a Thursday night there. We'll see if they can reach those numbers in July and August, but I would continue I like the AUX. It was quick. And because it was a shorter season, it created more drama. I mean, that last game was probably the greatest game that's ever been played in Athletes Unlimited in the now 3 years we were kind of softball. And I think it's tremendous And the location of San Diego is tremendous. All we got to do now, though, is get Vic back out to San Diego during that time.
Tell the plane tickets to go down. I might consider it.
Maybe the Big Ten could help you out with that.
Oh, speaking of Big Ten, Eric,
I hear the Big Ten's going to be orchestrating some flights from California. But as you
hand over fist. Speaking of Big Ten, Eric, we have an interesting question, Jim Munoz. Do you ever see Laura Berg jumping ship to the Big Ten since Oregon State may not be invited? I don't see it.
People are inviting you to come to San Diego. So can we get Vic a place to stay? Can we make this? I think we can negotiate.
Hey,
can we get Vic? What's your asking?
Let's make. Hey, since everyone talks about hypothetical trades, let's make a trade. Chucky Kemp, 2 AUX guests, and 4 jerseys signed to Eric Lopez in exchange for myself, Jenna Becerra, and a Inner Circle Live to be streamed later in AUX.
Whoa! You just got an invite from Michelle. You get to stay on the beach at her house. Yo! Hashtag get Victor to San Diego. I feel like it's come on.
So let's see. Get Jenna to the Jane. Get Jenna to the Jane. Get Kenzie to Clearwater. Get Vic back to San Diego. I mean, I am going to be traveling in August in some capacity, so it might be to San Diego. It might be. You never know. It might be the Rosemont. You never know.
All right, so back to the
back to the question at hand.
It's a good question. It's a good question. I don't think, and I haven't spoken to her about it. I know she's very happy in Corvallis,
especially after the season that they just had.
Obviously, just made the World Series, has a family, raising a family there. But you never say never. What's the opportunities that could come up? You don't know. It's a good question. I'll be curious if we get a press release between now and, say, December, where they announce maybe an extension or something to that extent of Laura Berg, because I think she's earned that over there. It's a good question. Could I see her leaving? I think it would have to be the perfect situation. What that is. For example, like I don't see her going back to her alma mater in Fresno State necessarily, something like that. It would have to be.
It'll have to be a very special situation that would make her consider leaving.
But with the way the college landscape is, you just never know, right? Because 1 minute
nothing is improbable,
right? I mean, you just don't know. So never say. I would say no, just because I think that the family and stuff. But at the same time, we don't know what's on the horizon. So it's a very good question. And again, what are the marquee jobs a year from now, 2 years from now? I mean, what if what jobs could be open? What would she be interested in? It's a very valid, and I think, that's an interesting question. With the uncertainty of the Pac-12, I don't see much movement there. One of the positives that the Pac-12 has is a lot of their alums are coaching there, right? Like
exactly.
Like Jessica Allister, I don't see. He's not going to leave Stanford no matter what.
No.
Heather Tarr ain't leaving Washington, in my opinion.
No.
No matter what, but you never know. I just would be surprised a little bit. It would catch me a little off guard. Like Caitlin Lowe, Arizona. You know what I mean? Like Arizona. I just don't see people bolting. But the Laura Berg one is interesting because obviously she's a World Series head coach. Obviously the credentials speaks for themselves. So, but again, I don't know what would interest her. What would be the job? And sometimes I know people could say money.
It's more than money.
The only difference is if is Laura Berg getting offered an SEC job? Yeah, then at that point, that's going to be hard to pass up, right? But if it's not an SEC job, it's not a significant difference in the salaries and things like that. Oregon State versus, some other of the schools that you might think. It's not like basketball, for example, where there's a bigger gap.
Bigger gap. Yes.
Like really in softball, it's the SEC, some of the Pac-12, and that's like the Big Ten. That's the other thing. Will they? You mentioned this, Victor. Will they spend money on softball, or they're gonna, or because I know everybody wants to knock the SEC, but the thing that I give the SEC credit for,
they spend their money on all their sports, their sports,
and especially in softball with facilities, coaching, salaries, etc. The Big Ten hasn't done that. They have not done that at this point. Will they do that? I don't know. They need to prove it. And I know it's not everybody, like Michigan will spend money there, but there's other schools that the Big Ten that they don't spend money on softball. And you know this very well, Victor. I think it's part of the problem is Big Ten, volleyball is kind of their priority over there as far as women's sports is concerned. They just had record ratings on the Big Ten network with volleyball. I will defer to you on this because you've covered volleyball for a decade.
Let me put it this way:
dominates volleyball.
Big Ten volleyball is just as dominant as the SEC in softball, if not more so.
And so, if the money's going there, they're not going to spend it on softball. Where the Big Ten, let's be honest, there's times in the year where you can't play softball up there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason why most Big Ten schools play.
Start down south or out west.
Right. And by the way, they're about to add. Let me ask you this: we've spent so much time on the Big Ten softball, rightfully so, but is volleyball the sneaky? I mean, USC, UCLA. What does that mean in volley? Is that just like is that the equivalent of Oklahoma, Texas to the SEC in softball? Is that the equivalent?
Yes.
I mean, how do you? Okay.
Yes. Because volleyball has more championships. Wow. And as crazy as this sounds, I saw Michelle Kohler tweeted this. Volleyball has more championships than softball. So the Big Ten volleyball is going to be. Big Ten volleyball is already bonkers. Now you're adding UCLA, USC. Whew.
Well, and that's the thing I'm skeptical about the softball end is will Big Ten schools spend money to compete with UCLA in softball? Because you're going to have to invest in softball to compete with UCLA in softball, or you will get destroyed. Like I think UCLA could easily do to the Big Ten what Oklahoma's done to the Big 12, where they run roughshod, except for a couple teams, right? Like Oklahoma State, Texas have, been there with OU to some extent.
It could be Michigan. It could be Michigan. It could be Michigan and Northwestern.
But I'm speaking like others. I won't mention schools, but there's a lot of schools in that Big Ten. They know who they are that haven't spent money on softball. Will they do that now with the new deal with UCLA coming in, or are they not? Because if they don't, I see some run rules in a lot in your future.
A lot of run rules.
So we'll see. Look at this. You're being asked to would Stacey Newman and Rachel Garcia's staff be a likely Big Ten move when they get rid of a coach from I don't know. Stacey Newman, by the way, San Diego, very happy there. Husband, a lawyer. There's always been rumors about Newman as head coach, but I think she's got a family. I think she's comfortable. And here's the thing.
She waited so long to.
Right. She waited a long time.
She waited a long time to become a head coach, and we saw what the Aztecs did in her first year with that star-studded staff. And two, she may end up in the Pac-12 if circumstances fall right. So she may not have to worry about being in the Big Ten.
I agree. If San Diego State gets added in to softball, that's going to be very interesting. That's going to be very interesting. By the way, you're wrong. The SEC has actually won more national titles since 2015. That's going to be official in a couple years when Oklahoma joins. So,
correct.
I mean, it's going to be very confusing. But I agree with you about Newman. I don't think all of a sudden the Big Ten's going to attract bigger names in coaching. I just don't. Not from the West Coast. I really don't. And I'm going to tell you, I think there's going to be people that are going to be turned off. There are going to be people that will turn on UCLA in California. There will be others that don't. I think there'll be some that will be not happy. But I think that's across the board. There's going to be a lot of people across the board in college sports fans that are not going to be happy with a piece of the action where the direction of the sport is.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Here's the other thing.
With UCLA leaving, if UCLA doesn't win a national title in the next year or two, which I think they could, Is the Pac-12 ever going to win a national title? Have we seen the last? Could we be seeing the last national title of the Pac-12 in the next year or two?
Wow.
Because we don't know what the future is of the Pac-12.
That's a valid point. Valid point. Valid point, again, sir.
I don't know. We'll see. That could be an interesting question. What happens first? Starting in 2024, the Big Ten wins a national title or the Pac-12, and it could be a tricky answer.
And will Oklahoma and Texas be in the SEC before all of that?
That's another one that's got to play itself out too. That's going to be another one. It's going to be tricky. It's going to be tricky. But we'll see what happens. Obviously, a long ways to go. But
yes,
what do you think, Victor? The media days are coming out in football. Do you think we're going to hear more stuff concrete as far as movement? Do you think the conferences will table this for a year? Like, do you think we won't get or a few months?
We won't get anything.
Yeah,
we won't get anything publicly, but there will be leaks and sources giving a little breadcrumbs along the way.
Well,
which makes the news. I didn't mean to interrupt. Which makes the news of USC and UCLA joining the Big Ten even much more stunning because nobody saw this coming until we heard those leaks a couple hours before on Thursday.
Yeah. I don't think we'll see what we saw last fall where the Big 12 added the 4 teams. I don't know if maybe that's the exception. Maybe the Pac-12 adds some teams this fall. But again, maybe that's what we can look for. I mean, you're right, though. The speculation will not end anytime soon. No. Which is disappointing for me because I take July and August as my time away to some extent. And one of the things I hate is speculation about realignment, but here we are.
Y'all got time? Wait, you got time away?
Somewhat.
Novel concept.
Somewhat. I just need a new kitchen right now. We're still trying to. While you're broadcasting games, I'm trying to, get this process of a new kitchen sink and all that.
All the people I know need new kitchens. What kind of weird? Oh well.
Just preserve your kitchen. That's my advice.
Should we tell our viewers if they didn't listen to yesterday's or most recent episode with New Mexico head coach Nicole Dixon, which you need to do so, by the way? Should we tell the people who we got on next week on the show?
Go ahead.
Well, if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you already know who they are. But if you don't, again, hit that subscribe button right now so you can do that. Next week, Haley Dolcini. Yes, that Haley Dolcini, who led Texas to the Champ Series. And Aaron Edmondson, one-time Red Raider, then Lady Vol. Aaron got a chance to talk to them about their journeys to their respective destinations and their outstanding careers. And again, Monday to 4th of July, so we're going to be on Tuesday and Thursday. And Dolcini will be the Tuesday show, and then Edmondson will be on Thursday. Is that correct, sir?
Special dates, too, that Tuesday and Thursday on the podcast. We'll have more on this developing story with UCLA leaving for the Big Ten starting in 2024, among others. But, yes, Tuesday, Haley Dolcini, and then Thursday, Aaron Edmondson, to talk a little bit about the transfer portal, a little bit about their careers as well. And then we'll work on some other guests moving forward in the summer. We don't take off seasons here, people. We don't because, well, there's constant news going on. And heck, but don't forget, the World Games are this month. Team USA and company there in Birmingham,
by the way,
Alabama.
We gotta send a congratulations to our boy Gray Robinson. He'll be doing a call of that on CBS Sports Network with Caleb Bro.
You got to get him back on the show to discuss that, or Bro, or one of the two.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, he's busy getting. The good. Hopefully for him, he avoids rain there, unlike in the FGCL, where I feel like every time he's tweeting, there's a rain delay. This is why I don't do. By the way, this is why I don't do. I've learned this. I learned this lesson the hard way about a decade ago. You know what I'm talking about, because we both did it.
I'm aware.
We both did the FGCL Summer League Baseball about a decade ago for a full season.
FCSL, Florida Collegiate League. That's different from the FGCL.
Thank you. Thank you. My memory is a little off on that one.
Thank you. That's
Because
all
all I remember was the rain delays. I don't know if you've heard. It rains in Florida every day in the summer.
Yes.
That's our issue.
And it rains heavily.
Yeah. And so when I see Greg tweeting about rain delays, I'm like, yep, that is why I don't participate in calling softball in the summer. Because odds of being stuck in a rain delay are pretty high.
Pretty good.
But hey, good for him and Caleb Broda to be part of that. By the way, good for CBS Sports Network to pick up that tournament.
Yes.
That's pretty big.
Yes.
And the exhibitions for Team USA will be on Peacock. And so then they'll have the games on CBS Sports Network. That's big news there. So good to see the international game get some coverage on television there. And we'll have coverage of that. I got to check. I got to see if Team USA is going to be doing some Zooms or not, but we'll definitely have coverage of that tournament.
We will. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely.
During that time frame. So, all right. That's a wrap for this show. We thank Justin McLeod for his brief cameo appearance.
You're going
to give him a hard time about this. I mean, when you were on driving, no issues, he couldn't last 5 minutes.
I mean, it is what it is, man. That air, that altitude air hits different, man.
Oh man, that's pretty good. We'll try to get him on. We will get him on down the road in the future when he is in a level playing field, maybe a
more stable connection.
Right, because you guys got to go over. I'm sure he's going to be. They're going to be announcing the Golden
Mike Awards, which my partner over there is nominated. Gray's nominated as well.
We'll see what happens with that down the road.
Yes.
Thanks to everybody for tuning in and asking questions here. We'll be trying to do some live shows too from time to time as news warrants. We might even do one during the World Games. We'll see how the schedules play out. Because obviously we got a lot of subscribers, but make sure you keep it here on subscribe. We'll have some video interviews here as well throughout all year round, really, and like us. And we'll just be following as the news breaks. So for Victor Anderson, I'm Eric Lopez. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of In the Circle.
Good night, Canada.